if we look at an infant, a baby, I personally would say that they are living in the moment fully, right? They get hungry and they cry, right? They don't wait. They don't go, "Oh, mommy's not ready to feed me yet, so I'll just wait until she's ready," right? No, they're feeling those hunger pains and they go, "Wow!" right?
Welcome everyone. Today I have with me Joni, and Joni is an embodiment coach. And Joni, why don't you introduce yourself, who you are, what do you do?
Okay, my name is Joni Fraser. I am currently in Boulder, Colorado, in the United States, and I am an embodiment and intimacy coach. So I work with women and couples, and I run groups on what's called sacred intimacy. And within sacred intimacy, we have three pillars. The first pillar is presence. And so that's the embodiment coaching that I do, helping people to arrive in the present moment as fully as they are able. And then the second pillar is what's called polarity or sexual polarity. And this is recognizing that the sexual chemistry felt between two people is not necessarily magical. Like it doesn't just like appear out of nowhere, or, like you either have it or you don't. Like it can actually be created. It's science. So an example that I like to give with that is taking two magnets that are of the same, right? They tend to repel. And two magnets that are opposite attract very strongly, right? So we're looking
Mhm.
at this and what energy are people embodying moment to moment to moment? And is that what they consciously want to do? Like, do they want to be embodying the certain energy in the specific moment to achieve a certain goal, for example? Or maybe they want to be in the different energy, right? So I help people with that. So the sexual polarity and recognizing what energy you're embodying in the moment and how to consciously change that energy at will. Now, the third pillar of
Mhm.
sacred intimacy is devotion. And this can be devotion to love itself. It could be devotion to God or a higher power or nature, whatever the language is, right? But something greater than yourself, right? It could be devotion to your partner, right? It, but it is, and actually, though, let me say it's also devotion to your highest version of yourself, right? Instead of just succumbing to what I call cravings and aversions of our egoic self, right? We learn how to
Mhm.
observe those cravings and aversions and live from a place kind of, if you want to say, above them in this equanimous state where we're not just pulled constantly by these cravings and aversions or these things that we want or these things that we don't want, so living more from this equanimous state of being. Yeah, so my work is mostly all on that. And it's where we're exploring, me and my clients and anyone who follows my work, we're exploring how to embody more love moment to moment to moment.
That's really cool. It sounds very interesting and very like complicated job. But let me ask you more about this. What does the word embodiment mean?
Yeah, great question. So, embodiment to me is this is very similar to this word presence, that is often used in mindfulness practice. Um, so in my background, let me talk about that for a second, if that's okay. So I've been teaching
Yep.
yoga and meditation for over 20 years. Um, uh, Several years ago, I went to graduate school and became what's called a somatic therapist, psychotherapist. Um, so I was working in the mental health realm in using this modality of somatic psychology, which recognizes that trauma and emotions and whatnot, but it lives in our body, lives in our tissues. And just talk therapy, though, can be helpful for some people in some instances, of course. Um, but we need to be moving and sounding our bodies in order to really release these traumas. Okay. So embodiment is the ability to um, drop from our mind and go into our body and be with these physical sensations, rather if they're pleasant and wonderful or if they're really uncomfortable, right? Like when our bodies are tight and tense and rigid, like most of us don't really want to feel that. And we will do, usually unconsciously, but we will do whatever we can in order to avoid feeling those uncomfortable sensations. So I help people to begin to notice when they start to what I call exit the present moment. Um, so when they start to think about the future, or if they're on their phones or whatnot. Not saying that we can't be on our phones, but just noticing more and more when we exit the present moment, and see if we can return moment to moment, return to the body, feel the body breathe, right? And just be with the body, be with these sensations, and cultivating our muscles, so to speak, our awareness muscles, our ability to be with the body, in the body, and then start to relate to others and engage with others. So that can be quite a stretch for some people. And then we go even deeper when we're working with intimate partners, sexually intimate partners. Was that helpful?
Yeah, it was, and it made me think. Uh, like living in the presence, it sounds so simple and like one word, very simple advice, something written on like a postcard. But in practice, it is really hard, and it
Yeah.
seems like so. When do we stop living in present? Are we born like this, like we do not have ability to live in present and we have to learn, or is it something that we forget when we are growing up and then we have to relearn?
I love that question. That's wonderful. Um, so, if we look at an infant, a baby, right? I personally would say that they are living in the moment fully, right? They they get hungry and they cry, right? They don't wait. They don't go, "Oh, mommy's not ready to feed me yet, so I'll just wait until she's ready," right? No, they're feeling those hunger pains and they go, "Wow!" right? And same with the diaper, right? Like they don't wait for the perfect timing to you know dirty their diaper. Infants,
Yeah.
babies are a wonderful example, in my opinion, of living in the present moment. So I do believe that we come in to this world in a very present way. But as we mature and grow up, and we're told by our parents and our teachers, and members of our community, right, to maybe hold back certain emotions because it's not the proper time to share that, or um, uh, I, yeah, there's other examples too, right? But we're taught how to start to come out of that present moment and contain ourselves in certain ways, which is a good thing. Don't get me wrong, that can be good, that containment of certain emotions. But then, we keep going, and we as our minds develop throughout our life, our early stages of life, right, we start to get more caught up in those minds and in fantasies, and distracted maybe with games, and then eventually video games and news articles, and planning for events that are happening in the future, which again, that's life. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be doing these things. But yeah, does that help?
Yeah, it does. But yeah, it is very complicated. Like as a kid, you were living in the presence, but as you got educated and you got behaved, like you adopted certain things, like this is the way I should behave as a member of society, as a kid or as an adult. So, what do you think? Like, what traits are good for a functioning member of society? Like, you should have these emotions under control. But when it comes to is there any category of emotions which you should control, or like, is there any boundary, or like it depends on this condition? Like, in this case, you should let it go, and whatever that might look like.
Great question. I love this. So now we're getting into the second pillar of sacred intimacy, which is looking through the lens, seeing the entire world through a lens which says there are two energies in this world. And those energies are um, alpha energy, is what I call. Old school language is masculine energy. The other energy is what I call omega. Old school language is feminine energy, right? So masculine and feminine. Now the masculine energy is a is consciousness itself. And it is a penetrative energy. It goes forth in the world. Um, it is living on purpose. It is having a goal and moving towards that goal. That's that penetrative energy, right? It is the ability to um, contain or even transcend emotional states, or even mental states too, right? Like someone could be really, their brain could be working so hard, all these thoughts, and alpha energy can actually begin to transcend that and discern to take the next best steps of action. That's alpha. So omega, the other energy, is more of a it's creation itself. It is dynamic and moving, and is receiving energy. It is emotionality, right? It is expression. It is music. It is nature. It is, it's everything um, expressed. It is the universe expressed in some sort of form, rather that be physical form or sound or taste or scent. It engages our senses. And we all have both of these. Everything in this world has both of those energies. It's just some of us are have more of one or the other, right? So I would consider myself an omega based being. And from what I know of you, Ankit. You are definitely, in my opinion, an alpha-based being. And we're both beautiful, but we are different, right? So, to better now address your question, the alpha-based being is one who can, now there's different tiers to this too, okay? So we'll talk about that in a second. But the alpha based being is one who can definitely, or someone who's embodying their alpha energy, excuse me, because that's true too. I'll go on that in a second. When we're embodying that alpha energy, that's when we can, in a more healthy way, contain the emotions, and maybe even transcend the emotions. And omega base beings, again, there's a tier here and that we can go over. Um, let's see. So with omega base beings, their gift to the world in relationship is to express themselves moment to moment to moment. Again, ideally without the cravings and the aversions, in this equanimous state, right? But with all the traumas that happen in life, with all the what I call programming or social conditioning that happens in life, we can get in these patterns of that are just simply belief patterns, where we might, omega based beings might resist, the authentic expression of their heart's truth in the moment, either because they were told, like, be quiet, you can't be emotional, like you need to be, civilized and professional, um, or they might have gotten the message in life that they're too much, like they're too emotional and too expressive and they need to contain themselves. So, like, a bunch of shame and shadow stuff can come up and really prohibit, that expression. How are we doing? Is this landing for you?
It is.
So we had been discussing the differences between omega and alpha energies, and, how
Mhm.
they tend to relate to emotion.
Yeah. And if let me know if I got this correctly, alpha energy people are kind of like this, like they have difficulty processing their emotions, and which is why they
Great,
can be rational in the moment.
great question. Great question. Can you hear me? Cool. Okay.
Yeah, I can
So,
hear you.
because alpha energy is this, penetrative energy, they, when someone is embodying their alpha, right, they're on a mission, they're going to do something, they're going out into the world, and that takes a lot of courage and a bit of tough skin, right? So, in order to develop that tough skin, right, they can't necessarily be, um, all lost in their emotions, right? Because the slightest little mishap that could happen, right? They'd be like, no, right? So they have to develop that harder skin. So I like to use this image, right? So omega based beings, are like flowers, right? They're very sensitive and beautiful and blossoming, and they move in the wind, right? And alpha based beings are more like rocks, right? They're solid and hard, they're dense, and they can, go through a window and not notice much, right? Or whatever, um, because
Yeah.
they develop that thick skin. So this is where, a lot of couples that I work with, right? They, have challenges in trying to understand each other, and they tend to think that the other should be more like them, right? Like the women often are saying, you should be more sensitive, and I need you to be more connected to your emotions, right? And the men are saying, like, but you're too emotional. I need you to be more logical like me. And that's, and then they start to butt heads, and it, like, love can start to dissolve, and that feels awful for everybody. No one's intentionally trying to do this. It's just a misunderstanding of who we're actually in relationship with. Like men, you,
Mhm.
if you're with an omega based being, you're not in relationship with someone who thinks or behaves or lives like you. And same with women. You're not in a relationship with another woman, necessarily, like an omega based being. You're not. Remember, the like energies will repel each other. Um,
Mhm.
so, um, sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there of where I was going with this. So we have the flower and we have the rock, right? And let's just, for a second, let me just talk about this concept in, again, in sacred intimacy, called the three ways of relating. Okay. And so this is better
Okay.
addresses that, the like will repel and opposites will attract. So we have, the three ways of relating. There is relating in when one person is in alpha mode and the other person is also in alpha mode, right? So we have alpha alpha. This is good for parenting, for working on a project together, for being business partners together, right? But for anything else, it's going, alpha alpha can really butt heads. My way's the best way. No, my way's the best way, right? Another way of
Mhm.
relating is omega omega. Now we see this when, we're with our romantic partner and we're like taking, what do they call it? Netflix and chill night, kind of a thing, like where you're
Yeah.
watching a movie,
Mhm.
snuggled up with the blanket, and just like cozy together. Or if you are emotionally relating together, both people are in an emotional experience, right? Or you're deeply, like, you're, bonding in that friend mode. Um, and this can be challenging with couples that I work with. They come to me and they love each other dearly, and they say it's like we're friends living under the same roof, right? The sexual chemistry has dissipated. Okay, that is omega omega energy. Now, the third way of relating is the way of polarity, which is alpha omega, right? And it doesn't always have to be that the man is in alpha and the woman is in omega. No, there is this term that we use called energetic agility. So there can be moments where the man actually is in his emotional state and feeling emotional, and the woman becomes the witness, becomes the alpha energy in that moment. So polarity can, it can be either or with this concept of energetic agility. And playing with that can be really fun and can, evolve a person's, their whole sense of who they are. I'll pause there because I can go on and on about it, and
Yeah.
I just want to see how that lands for you.
I think it's really interesting, and I'm just thinking about that analogy between rock and a flower. And you mentioned very beautifully that a rock doesn't have to be hard all the time. It can get soft and mellow, and the rose can get hard depending on the situation. So
Yes.
that's really interesting.
Yes.
But yeah, how do they make it work? Like, how does it look in everyday scenario? Maybe actionable. How does it appear in a relationship?
How does it look in everyday situation, and what do you mean by it?
I mean by just this agility of being moving from alpha to omega, and how does it look in action?
Great. Yes, great question. So let me just give an example from the majority of the women that I work with. Um, a lot of the women, not all of them, but a lot of the women that I work with are highly successful women, right? They're entrepreneurs, or they have a high position in a company. They are living on purpose, right? So they're embodying that alpha energy um, a lot of the time, and they they're an expert at project management and managing their time. And they will, go to work every day. And, not all days will they have an awesome day, but, oftentimes they're in this alpha mode. And then they come home and they want to be in a sexually intimate experience with their partner who is also an alpha based being, but they don't know how to make it happen because remember, alpha alpha can clash. So they come to me and we start to work on these practices in how to come out of that alpha energy and move more into that omega, that surrendering softness, that ability to receive from your alpha partner. And it's quite powerful. But let me give you the image of a wall clock, a clock that you put on the wall, and it has hands, right? And 12 o'clock at top, 6 o'clock on the bottom, right? So from 1 o'clock to 6 o'clock, let's call this the omega area. And from
Hmm.
6 o'clock, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, this is the alpha area. Okay. And from 12 o'clock up here to 6 o'clock down here is a straight line. And we'll just call that neutrality. Okay. That's completely
Hmm.
neutral. And 12 o'clock up here, we'll call this complete enlightenment. Okay. Oneness with God, samadhi, whatever word you want to use, aha moments. Okay. Um, and 6 o'clock down here is total human experience, like egoic self, right? Just seeing self as separate from everyone and everything. No blame, no shame, right? This is just a model. So if let's say we're living life and we're at 6 o'clock, we're in neutrality, and we're waking up in the morning and we know that we have to go to work, right? So the hand of the clock starts to move to like 7 o'clock. Once we get to work and we're working on our tasks and we get in the flow of our work state, right? We might get to 9 o'clock, maybe even close to 10 o'clock, right? We're really in it. And alpha based beings, when we're in our alpha energy, we become more single focused, right? We're focused on the goal that needs to be met, right? Which is a beautiful thing, but it's very opposite of omega experience. And let's say we come home from work and we want to get into that omega relaxation state. And this is true for men or women. This is not just have to be for women. Um, we can't just go from 9 o'clock over to 3 o'clock, right? That's not how the clock works. The hands on the clock
Yeah.
don't work that way. Um, we can unwind and go back to 6 o'clock and then go into 5, 4, and 3 o'clock, right? So that's how the energies work. We can't just go way up in one and then chop over to the other. We have to come down and then begin again over in the new energy. So there are very particular practices and techniques that we can apply to do this. And people can work with me to discover these techniques and practices that best work for them, but there you don't need to. Like there's also so many other um, things that you could find out on the internet, right? Like if you're wanting to strengthen your alpha experience, then go look at Jocko's, Instagram, right? He has tons of suggestions.
Hmm.
Do formal meditation, seated meditation, right? That is an alpha practice, which a lot of the women who work with me, they're surprised to find that out. I say, if they want to experience more omega, I say, stop with the formal meditation practice, right? Also, alpha building would be something like jujitsu or any kind of martial art, any kind of formal training that is meticulous and has
Hmm.
step by step procedure, right? Omega, now moving into the omega energies, um, getting home and turning the lights down low, putting on some soft music, and getting into a bathtub, right? And allowing your body, so allowing the mind to drop into the body and start to feel the body and start to actively relax the body, like letting go of that work day feeling. Um, any kind of like ecstatic dance, not a formal dance, but like just letting your body move to the music without having very specific steps. We're not performing. Um, yeah, getting a massage can be really helpful, right? To have that. Like you could do self massage, but also having someone else give you massage to allow you to let go again of the mind and come into the body. Sometimes a lot of alpha based beings, they need physical contact on their body to begin to actually feel their body again, because they were so much up here and planning and strategizing and moving forward with their goals that they've forgotten a bit. That density has gotten a bit strong, so they need help reconnecting with their bodies. Is that helpful?
Yeah. This is so profound and so important in this time, because I don't know if you're aware about this movement. It's called alpha, like alpha male kind of a thing, where influencers like I don't know if you know about him, Andrew Tate, and a lot of influencers like him who are influencing male youth. Like this is the definition of how a male should be. Like his stuff, he's like he goes around, he sleeps around, and he treats women like an object. And I think this is motivated by mostly by this thing, like you are only alpha energy. What I'm getting from this conversation, like people assume a male to be just be a masculine energy, and it's not a combination of both, or it's not a dance of both. And this is so beautiful because I have seen a lot of these alpha males cry on my shoulder. I have been there. So I can understand like there's a very common or very cliche term like boys don't cry, but I've seen them cry, and they don't cry in front of others, but in presence of a good friends, they do cry. They open their hearts out. So
Yes,
I think it's very important in this time to understand like it's not about one or two. It's not black and white. It's a combination of both. It's kind of like yin yang thing.
exactly. Exactly. Just like the yin yang. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
When we start to cut ourselves off from the other energy, and think that we have to be all the one energy, it becomes incredibly stifling and, in my opinion, problematic. But if that's, someone's path to try that out, I mean, that's their path, and they have, go ahead, do that. Um, but my experience has been that that is absolutely, that's suffering, because we do
Yeah.
have both of those energies, as you said. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. That's important.
And yeah,
Mhm.
and I think the conventional roles we have to assume, let's say, when I'm a son, or when I will be a husband, or when I will be a father, it is assumed that in that role there are certain levels of alpha or omega you have to carry. Like as a son, you can be omega in presence of your mother. You can cry. You can like put your head on her lap and just relax and open your heart out. But when you are a husband, that omega level drops down. So I'm found this very difficult to like for a person to shift into different roles. Like now I'm a father, I cannot show my emotion. So it is assumed that you in that set role you have to be like this. You have to just suck it up and be a man in the situation. And I have found this very problematic. Like why cannot I be just be myself in this all situation? Why do I have to assume different rules and the criteria set by this, or I should have this level of energy and emotion in this situation? What do you think about this?
I love what you just said. Why can't I just be myself? It's that. Always be yourself. Yes. I love that so much, and I trust the wisdom of all of us, of you, like in your process, and the wisdom of my process, and my clients, and other people. Like, we all have our own journey, and I do trust that our own body minds know best. And even if we make a mistake, right, we can learn from that in the very next moment if we so choose. Sometimes it takes us a little while to learn, but sometimes we can pick that up right after the next moment and go, oh, that's not really what I wanted to do. Let's try something else. Right? Yeah. So that was beautifully
Yeah.
said. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And now let's move to another interesting topic. Let's talk about sex. So, this is my genuine question, and I want your perspective on this. What do you think makes sex different from other bodily activities we do as the human animal?
So are you saying, like, how is sex different than eating?
Yeah. Like, what makes it
Yeah.
different?
Yeah. So interesting. And I'm tempted to turn this question back to you and ask you what you think makes it different. Um, uh, do you want to go there? Do you want to try that? What do
Oh,
you think?
my answers will offend a lot of people. I'm still on this journey and I'm finding some very radical point of views on this.
Mhm. Great.
But yeah,
So again, the
I think
alpha
for.
base being. Oh, go ahead. Were you going to share?
Oh, no, sorry. I was just. I think I will after
Okay.
you. After you.
Okay. Well, the alpha base being is going to have a different experience than the omega base being, because again, they're totally different beings. Um, but for me, um, I've had different experiences in my life, and I've had sexual experiences that may have been actually very similar to the act of eating or drinking or riding a bicycle or whatever it is, right? Like, just to get it done, right? Like, oh, this is a need, it needs to be met, I'm going to get it done. Boom, right? Um but when I started exploring this concept of sacred intimacy, gosh, I started exploring this back in 2011. And it just just blew my mind. I was like, wait, what? Um, and from then, I realized that sexual intimacy, sacred intimacy, can be used as a path to spiritual maturity. Okay. So it can be a mechanism for what one might say like personal development. That's a very alpha term, right? If we if we told an omega based being that we're going to have sex so that we can develop our brain ourselves, like that might actually close them and hurt them, right? So but from a alpha point of view, that could be like, oh whoa, wow, now I really want to show up, like I can use this to, grow, like to expand myself, to further develop myself. That's interesting, right? The omega based being, however, is more about the actual experience of love and connection and closeness and intimacy, right? That's what really lights them up. So it's when we bring both of these worlds together and adds depth to our life, right? So to answer your question, um, try to better answer your question. Like sex can be just like eating or getting, going grocery shopping or what, filling up your car with gas or fuel, right? Like it can just be another task. Um, but we can start to evolve that. We can add depth and add more and more and more meaning. And that's where then this term sacredness comes in, if we so choose.
Yeah,
How does that
that's
land for
interesting
you?
perspective on that. Yeah, I'm just thinking why, like it has become, maybe it's a societal thing that it has become such a hot topic, or yeah, there's so much stigma, there's so much compulsion, like you have to do this, or by this age you should do this, or like there's the I think the whole institution of wedding is surrounded around that single thing, like wedding and marriage and raising of family and raising child and succession of your own genes. So I can understand how is it, how society benefits from it, and why there are some institutions around it. But on the deeper level, between two-person, what is being generated me in the moment or when they are together, what is there something which is beyond the act, or maybe like the combination of alpha omega, what they are learning from each other. So I'm still very curious about this, and since I don't have any experiences in this matter, so I'm just making a hypothesis like why it should be like this. On biological side, I can completely understand like it's succession of your genes, but here it's not the same as with animals, because now here are two consciousness involved, and think about the act, it's not just that one and done kind of thing. And that's why I'm uh, maybe called me old fashioned, but I'm against that kind of thing, like you can be with as many partners, because I don't think each act has a impact on your consciousness, even if you're
Yes.
not aware about it.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
maybe like callousness, it can negatively impact, or me, I'm just making hypothesis here, but there should be some conscious thought behind the act or whatever you are doing. What do you think about this?
I agree with you 100%. 100%. And that is, I think it's so important for us to talk about this, and especially at this time in our world where more and more and more people are exploring um, sex before marriage, or just even having sexual relationships with multiple people. Um, I do also hold the same view as you, that whatever actions we take, whether they're conscious or unconscious, they're going to have an impact on our own body mind as well as someone else's, right? And
Yeah,
even on the people around us, and you could even say on the world,
yeah,
right? So I'm a big fan of bringing more consciousness into our actions, discerning our next steps, not just allowing craving and aversion to dictate our lives, right? This is we can see this, right, with let's say a couple in relationship, and maybe they start to function more in one of those modes where there's resonance, either alpha alpha or omega omega, and the sexual chemistry dissolves, and then maybe one or both partners start looking elsewhere for sexual chemistry, and maybe they're being secret about it or not, right? But this is this will have definitely consequences. But also, we can,
yeah,
um, there's the flip side to that coin too, that I just want to name. We don't have to go into it a lot, but the flip side to that is also, living in a mode of resonance with our partner, either alpha alpha or an omega omega, and and not having an outlet or a channel for that sexual energy, and then we begin to shut that energy down, right? So that's the flip side of the coin of looking for it elsewhere. um, and all those situations can be worked with and navigated with more consciousness if the person so chooses, right? But the person has to choose to want that. No one can force you or try to motivate you. Like, that individual has
yeah,
to want to do the work, right? um so I could talk on and on and on and on about this topic, so I need to refer back to you. Can you help direct me where I should go next? Do you have another question, or?
yeah. uh, and this process of like when you get aware, like this act is not just about doing it and getting over it. You have to be conscious about who you are, like who you are bringing on with you, and how are you going to change their life, how are they going to change your life. And there's two consciousness involved. It gets much more complicated now, like the task to find a suitable partner, and now all these energies are involved, and it can be very tricky. And like there's always the pressure from society and from peers that by this age either you should get married, or you should have this, or you should have done this milestone, like cross this milestone from your list. But this can be life changing actually, as you're saying, like the way you are with your partner, the way you raise your children, and the way the atmosphere of your house and your family, it pretty much shapes how the society works. So what should one look in a partner?
That's a beautiful question. Well, compatibility is huge. And my what I would say first, I guess, is can you laugh with each other? Like authentically laugh with each other. That can be huge, right? So often, so many of us take ourselves so seriously, especially alpha-based beings, right? That seriousness can, though it's appropriate at times for sure, right? But the ability to be able to laugh with someone, especially someone that you're going to spend possibly the rest of your life with, right? Like there's a sense of safety there if we can actually allow ourselves to relax enough and get a chuckle. Um, also, you know, what is their relationship to what I call love? Like, is that important to you? What are their values? You guys, we have to have somewhat similar values in life. Otherwise things can go south real fast. Yeah, so we want to make sure that we have some sort of similar values. And can we express ourselves? Now, I've been using this word expression to describe omega, but alpha based beings, you too need to be able to express yourself. Can you identify um, your needs, and can you make requests to get your needs met? Can you have a conversation with this person and show up in a way that is vulnerable, right? We're going to use the magic word from Night Owl Nation, right? And
Yeah.
with vulnerability, right? This is the idea of being open and authentic and not knowing what the outcome will be, right? Being able to be open and authentic without knowing how the other person is going to respond to you. That's
Hmm.
huge. Um,
Yeah. The, yeah, definitely. There's a risk.
right? And if you are an alpha based being and you would like a more omega based being in your life, then you could. Is it okay if I talk about this for a second?
Sure.
Okay. Um, so you might be looking for a woman who has a natural inclination to kind of trust your lead, excuse me. So an example could be, and you don't have to please don't hold these as hard and fast rules, because again, energies can shift moment to moment to moment. Like, the woman could just be coming off of work and still be a bit in alpha mode. But if it happens repeatedly over time, then maybe that's an indication, right? Like a classic example is, does she let you open the door for her? Right? Or is she always the first one to open the door when like entering a building or a restaurant or whatever, right? Can she allow you to open the door for her? Can she um allow you to pick up the bill, right? I don't, in different countries, the cultures are different, but I know in America, the last several years, it's been real cool. And like, the feminists are more so, are, I'll pay my own way. Like, no, thank you. I don't want you to pay my meal. Right. And that's fine for them. But if you want an alpha based being, omega based people, um, then maybe you could surrender that urge to pay your own and allow him to pay for you, or allow maybe him to choose which restaurant you go to, right?
Yeah. I think it gives me an idea to why don't switch your energies willingly. Let's try to be more omega when you feel like being alpha. So be more emotional or be more nurturing. If you can do willingly, then have a different experience. Why get bound by certain identities like I have to be alpha all the time or I have to be omega or this is my time to switch? Let's play it out and find, maybe let's have fun. Let's not complicate life. It's already complicated as it is.
Yes, I love that. And let me also say, like, I would love alpha base beings to explore their emotionality. And some alpha base beings that I know, even one of my teachers, he says that, you know, he has like three emotions and like that's it. And like, no blame, no shame. Like, he doesn't like try to force himself to have different emotional experiences. He just accepts that fact that that's just who he is. And he still allows himself to show up in those three emotional states from time to time. You know, like, just like you said, he is still himself. Like, he doesn't think he just has to be in this alpha mode all the time. He will drop into those experiences. Um, and so alpha energy, just to share with everyone, this is an energy of witnessing, to see someone, right? So you're seeing someone, and the omega is to express. They're the witnessed, right? They are being witnessed by alpha. So if you ever find yourself in a situation, it could be with a friend or a family member or your lover or even like a therapist, right? Where you're having an experience, maybe you're having some tears, maybe you're having some anger come through, and someone else is there witnessing you. That's when you know that you're an omega and someone else is an alpha. And then the same can be true when you flip the coin. If you're witnessing someone have an emotional experience, you're an alpha, they're an omega. But if you're both having an emotional, let's say an argument, right? And you're both just like volcanoes erupting, right? You're both in that omega then. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so definitely alpha
But
based
yeah,
beings, please explore more. And it's not just about having an emotional experience as well. Like, you don't have to be sobbing your eyes out, right? It could be a feeling sense in your body that you're aware of. You're like, oh my gosh, my arms are tingling right now, and like my throat is getting tight, right? Like, great, explore more of that. And then can you express it in some way?
yeah, yeah. On that note, Johnny, it's been a wonderful conversation, and I'm really grateful that we had this conversation. Please let us know like where we can find you and how to reach out to you.
Oh, thank you. Um, I am definitely on Instagram at Joni Christine Fraser. And yeah, I have lots of different ways to connect, a website and email. And again, I work with individuals, I work with couples, and I also run groups. And there's also some free workshops that I offer from time to time too. So if this was intriguing, like, I'd love to connect with you in some way. And I just thank you so much for all your wonderful questions and for having me on. And Kit,
Yeah, it was
you're
wonderful.
pretty awesome.